Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Haiti's President Jovenel Moïse has been assassinated at his private residence by unidentified gunmen. In a statement, Interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph said the First Lady has also succumbed to her injuries. The attack occurred amid a rising wave of politically linked violence in the impoverished Caribbean nation. The US-led coalition fighting in Iraq says 14 rockets have hit the Ain al-Assad air base in Alamdar province. In a statement, coalition spokesperson Colonel Wayne Morato said initial reports indicate 3 minor injuries. Meanwhile, the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces say they have thwarted a drone attack on Al-Umar oil field. They say initial reports show no damage in the attack on the US-protected oil field in Deir al-Zor area. The Taliban have attacked the first provincial capital in Afghanistan since offensive began. Badghis governor Hushamuddin Shams said the fighters entered some parts of the city of Kalaino. He told reporters the fighters were forced to retreat after 2 hours of clashes. Pakistan is remembering Havaldar Lalik Jan on the 22nd anniversary of his martyrdom during the Kargil War. In a tweet, the military's media wing said Lalik Jan's fortitude will inspire many generations of defenders. He is one of the 11 recipients of Nishan-e-Haider, Pakistan's highest military award. After dropping for 3 days, Brazil's daily COVID-19 cases and deaths have risen again. The Latin American country registered more than 62,000 cases and over 1,700 deaths overnight. In Pakistan, the virus has claimed 17 more lives and infected more than 1,500 people in the past 24 hours. There are nearly 4 million deaths worldwide and more than 184 million cases. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. Haiti's President Jovenel Moïse has been killed in an attack by unidentified gunmen on his home in the nation's capital. According to Interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph, the First Lady has also succumbed to her injuries. Terming the incident heinous and barbaric, Joseph urged the public to remain calm. He said all measures have been taken to guarantee the continuance of the state. Moïse had been in power since February 2017. During his tenure, he faced accusations of corruption and was challenged by the wave of anti-government protests. The US-led coalition fighting in Iraq says 14 rockets have hit the Ain al-Assad air base in Al-Anbar province. This is the second such attack on the base, which houses American troops, in the last 2 days. In a statement, coalition spokesperson Colonel Wayne Morato said initial reports indicate 3 minor injuries. Meanwhile, the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces say they have thwarted a drone attack on Al-Umar oil field. They say initial reports show no damage in the attack on the US-protected oil field in the Deir al-Zor area. This comes a day after rockets targeted the US embassy in Baghdad and Ain al-Assad base, which houses American troops. The Taliban have attacked the first provincial capital in Afghanistan since the offensive began. Badghis governor Hushamuddin Shams said the fighters entered some parts of the city of Kalaino. He told reporters the fighters were forced to retreat after 2 hours of clashes. The government said other districts of Badghis outside the capital were already in the hands of the Taliban. Authorities said the assault caused panic among local people, prompting prisoners to break out of the city's prison. Iran has told the Taliban and Kabul representatives that it is ready to help end the crisis in Afghanistan. Speaking in Tehran, Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif urged the Afghans to make difficult decisions. Meanwhile, the Russian Foreign Minister warned that the Afghan situation has a tendency to swiftly deteriorate following NATO's hasty withdrawal. During a visit to Laos, Sergei Lavrov said Moscow will do everything to defend its regional allies, including using its military base in Tajikistan. And for more on this, we are joined by James Dorsey, a political analyst from Singapore. Thank you, sir, for your time at Indus News. First of all, we have seen how efforts to mediate a political solution by the US and Qatar have virtually hit a wall. So what can Iran do, which others couldn't, to facilitate an intra-Afghan political settlement?
Well, I think that both parties have a vested interest. So, with other words, the Taliban have an interest in having a good relations with their neighbors to create some degree of stability. And obviously relations in the past between Iran and the Taliban have been a very mixed bag for a variety of reasons, including the fact that the Taliban have incorporated forces that were very anti-Shiite. At the same time, Iran, as well as other neighbors of Afghanistan, have a vested interest in being involved in a peace process, particularly at a time that the U.S.-led negotiations don't appear to be going anywhere.
Mr. Dorsey, with the magnitude and the spread of the ongoing fighting in Afghanistan spreading by the hour, is there still a real possibility of a negotiated settlement at all?
Well, obviously, the tables turn as the balance of power changes, and it seems at this point that the balance of power is certainly in favor of the Taliban, which again makes not so much the issue of whether or not you can salvage the Kabul government the central issue, but for countries like Iran, a working relationship with whatever government may come to power in Kabul.
Mr. Dorsey, Pakistan has warned of dire consequences of the American coalition's hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan without a peace settlement, with Russia now stepping in to safeguard Tajikistan from a possible spillover effect. Do you believe other regional countries are at risk too?
Well, depending on how Afghanistan evolves. I mean, we've been talking until now about a Taliban takeover. There is also the possibility, maybe not of a civil war, but of a fair amount of strife between various Islamist groups, including the Taliban, but also more jihadist groups like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. And that certainly could cause a spillover into other countries in Central Asia.
Mr. James Dorsey, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. We really appreciate that. Now, moving on, the UN's nuclear watchdog says Iran has started the process of producing enriched uranium.
While the West suspects Iran's latest step may help it move closer to developing a nuclear weapon, Tehran has told the IAEA its enriched uranium metal will be used as fuel for a research reactor. The U.S. has condemned Tehran's decision, calling it an unfortunate step backwards for the revival of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said the U.S. is not setting a deadline for the talks, but he noted that Tehran's nuclear advances will have a bearing on Washington's stance. Meanwhile, Germany, France and the United Kingdom also voiced grave concerns. The three said Tehran is threatening a successful outcome to the Vienna talks to revive the deal. They urged Iran to halt all activities in violation of the deal and return to the negotiations in Vienna. The talks adjourned on 20th of June, and a date for their resumption has not yet been set.
And to talk more on this, we are joined by Kurush Shamalu, international relations expert. Thank you for your time at Indus News. With the new administration in Tehran, what does Iran intend to achieve with this step strategically and diplomatically?
Yes, thanks for having me on. With the new administration, which is going to come in place soon, and as you know, Raisi has been elected and he has the support of the Majlis, the Congress of Iran, and he also has the support of the Supreme Guide, Mr. Khamenei. So he wants to show the world that he's the one deciding, and Iran is not gonna bend over any more sanctions or any other relation. They want to prove to the world that Iran, even if the sanctions were very tough, the toughest in history, Iran could stand and didn't do anything, and even if its economy is in very bad shape, it survived. So they wanna show the world, and especially in the region, that they're one of the most powerful country in this region, and they wanna be counted on in every decision.
So, Mr. Shamlo, are the Vienna talks for the revival of the 2015 nuclear deal headed for a positive outcome anytime soon?
It's not going to be anytime soon. We're going to have to wait until Mr. Raisi take position and say what he wants. And as I just told you, he has a good stand, because now he can enrich the uranium, and nobody can say anything, because the United States put the toughest sanction, and it didn't do. It hurts the economy. It hurts a lot the economy of Iran. But Iran is still there. So on the sanctions, he doesn't want to talk about the conventional weapon. That's for sure. And he wants to be part of the region. He will not accept to go out of Iraq, to go out of Syria or Yemen. So this will not be part of the deal. But as I said before, they will sign a deal with the Americans, because Iran's economy needs that deal. Now I'm talking to you in Tehran. I arrived yesterday from Paris here, and we have no power, no electricity in Iran for 2 or 3 hours every day in Tehran. So the economy of Iran needs a new deal, needs the international community and the international companies to come and invest in Iran.
Mr. Kurosh Shamlo, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. We really appreciate that. And now moving on, Pakistan is remembering Havaldar Lalik Jan on the 22nd anniversary of his martyrdom during the Kargil War. In a tweet, the military's media wing said Lalik Jan's fortitude will inspire many generations of defenders. More in this report.
He volunteered for the Kargil War, thwarted Indian attacks, and inflicted heavy losses on the enemy. However, he was terminally wounded while fighting fearlessly and embraced martyrdom on July 7, 1999. Hailing from Gilgit-Baltistan, Lalik Jan is one of the 11 recipients of Nishan-e-Haider, Pakistan's highest military award.
Today is the martyrdom anniversary of my father Lalik Jan Shaheed, who is a national hero. I am his only son, and we as a family are proud of him because he sacrificed his life for the country and the Muslim world. I am invigorated by the same spirit and will never shy away from any such sacrifice needed whenever the time comes.
On behalf of the Chief of Army Staff, General Qamar Javed Bajwa, Commander Force Command Northern Areas, laid a floral wreath at Havaldar Lalik Jan Shaheed's grave in his native town, Ghizar. People from various walks of life, civil and military officials, and relatives of Shaheed attended the ceremony.
And to talk more on this, we are joined by Major General Ijaz Awan, retired. So thank you very much for your time at Indus News. Can you please share with our audience what earned Lalik Jan Shaheed the highest military honor in Pakistan?
Well, thank you very much. Lalik Jan and his colleague, Colonel Sher Khan, they hail from the same battalion and same regiment, Northern Light Infantry. And in the Kargil operation, they performed their duties they went beyond the call of their duty and made us all proud. It was their heroic action that repulsed repeated attack in waves by the Indian Army and inflicted very heavy casualties on them. And as you said, he was wounded in that action and terminally then he expired or embraced martyrdom. So he made all his regiment and in particular his battalion, 12th NLI, proud. And I think we all appreciate his sacrifice of this heroic soldier. And he was awarded the highest military award, the Gallantry Award of Pakistan Army, Nishan-e-Haider.
So, General Awan, what impact did Lalak Jan's valorous deeds have on the conflict?
Well, definitely it was a conflict, and which became now a questionable thing because of the response of our political government and what transpired between Prime Minister of Pakistan and the President of the United States of America, because he could not stand the pressure. This, in fact, was an operation which was executed in complete secrecy, because in 1984, India had violated the line of control and they had occupied the area of Siachen. In response to that, the Leh Kargil road that passes from there, stealthily the troops occupied that area and brought that strategic line of communication under control and under fire. But then politically, of course, there was a pressure from America for violation of line of control, and our political leadership at that time, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, could not stand the pressure. Rather than telling the President of the United States of America to put pressure on both the sides, India and Pakistan, to observe the line of control, sanctity of the line of control, and they should withdraw back to pre-1984 position in Kargil, in Siachen area, and we pull back and take up positions which were previously held. But unfortunately, he agreed for an unconditional retreat or vacation of the position, and all the sacrifices and heroic actions made by the men, well, unfortunately, they were not we did not benefit as a nation from all these sacrifices. But nonetheless, these people put up a brave fight and made us all proud, and set an example which inspires all other soldiers in performance of duties, whether on line of control or on the international border.
Major General Ijaz Awan, thank you very much for your time at Indus News. We really appreciate that. And now moving on, Pakistan's Navy Chief says naval forces are not only protecting maritime boundaries, but also contributing to the country's development. Admiral Mohammad Amjad Khan Niazi was addressing the 7th National Security Workshop, Balochistan. He also highlighted maritime security dynamics in the region. The participants lauded the efforts of the Pakistan Navy. They stressed the need to expand welfare projects across Balochistan. Indian forces martyred 2 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The youths were targeted in the Handwara area of the Kupwara district. The occupying troops carried out so-called cordon and search operations. Talking to the media, locals said Indian forces staged the extrajudicial murder as an encounter to mislead the world. They said that troops and police arrest the youths and kill them in fake encounter for their promotions and rewards. Rights groups say the Indian occupying forces have killed at least 384 Kashmiris since August 2019. The U.S. has emphasized its commitment to helping Saudi Arabia defend its territory and people. The Defense Department issued a statement after Saudi Deputy Defense Minister Prince Khalid bin Salman met officials in Washington. In a tweet, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said he discussed the urgency of ending Yemen war with Prince Salman. Austin also expressed concerns over what he called Iran's destabilizing role in the region. Meanwhile, Under Secretary of Defense for Policy Colin Call condemned the Houthi cross-border attacks. He also thanked Prince Salman for working constructively with the U.S. to end the war in Yemen. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has underscored the risky situation of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. On behalf of the OIC, Pakistan's UN envoy Tahir Hussain Andarabi spoke to the 47th session of the Human Rights Commission. He said the OIC has expressed grave concerns over the continuous human rights violation of Rohingya in Myanmar. The cooperation stressed on restoring the citizenship rights of Rohingya and demanded repatriation of the displaced Muslims. He added that the body hailed Bangladesh over providing temporary shelter and humanitarian assistance to the refugees. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has commended the role of the National Command and Operations Center in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. He said this after an American magazine included Pakistan in the list of countries that best controlled the pandemic. Meanwhile, the NCOC in a meeting stressed on the provinces to expedite the vaccination process ahead of Eid al-Azha. Pakistan has administered over 18.2 million vaccine doses to date. Meanwhile, the virus has claimed 17 more lives and infected over 1,500 people overnight. After dropping for 3 days, Brazil's daily COVID-19 cases and deaths have risen again. The Latin American country registered more than 62,000 cases and over 1,700 deaths overnight. There are nearly 4 million deaths worldwide and more than 184 million cases. More in this report.
The COVID-19 pandemic is accelerating in many countries despite enduring lockdowns and ongoing vaccination drives. Mexico has reported its biggest jump in new infections since late February. Zimbabwe has returned to a strict lockdown to combat a new surge amid vaccine shortages. New Zealand has given provisional approval for the Johnson & Johnson's Janssen vaccine. In Australia, New South Wales has extended Sydney's lockdown by another week.
The New South Wales government, based on the health advice, which is our key indicator, made the difficult decision to announce the extension of the lockdown and the existing restrictions in the regions for 1 week further until Friday midnight, the 16th of July. Now, the reason for this is, as we've been saying, this Delta strain is a game changer. It's extremely transmissible and more contagious than any other form of the virus that we've seen.
China has reported the highest daily coronavirus infection since 30th of January. South Korea is also considering to reimpose restrictions as it reported the second highest number of daily cases so far.
We have reported more than 1,200 new COVID-19 cases. This is the highest number since the third big wave last winter. The government will uphold the existing social distancing rules for another week and do our best to stop the spread by taking extra disinfection measures.
The World Health Organization has added a second life-saving drug to its list of treatments for severely ill COVID-19 patients.
In Iran, at least 3 people have been killed and 4 others injured in an explosion at a gas pipeline in the southwestern town of Shush. Local officials said the victims were the technicians at the pumping station. The oil minister has ordered an investigation into the blast. He pledged to help workers and their families in the area. China has called for an impartial investigation into Canada's treatment of its indigenous people. At the 47th session of the Human Rights Council, Beijing said Ottawa must do more than apologize. Mission Representative Jiang Duan called on Canada to take practical steps to remedy the harm caused by its historic mistreatment. He said those responsible must be brought to justice. The envoy also urged Canada to combat persistent racial discrimination and hate crimes against Africans and Asians. The US says coexistence with China is possible but very challenging. Addressing an event, White House Indo-Pacific Coordinator Kurt Campbell said Beijing has become increasingly assertive. He said President Joe Biden will host a summit later this year with the leaders of Australia, India and Japan to discuss China's influence. He said Washington is in favor of having unofficial ties with Taiwan but does not support its independence. Campbell said the US will have to come up with a strategy that presents China with opportunities but also a response if necessary. The United States says it is encouraged by the ongoing OPEC talks. The White House said Washington has spoken with officials in Saudi Arabia and the UAE to stem the rise in crude prices. At a press briefing, Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the U.S. administration is constantly monitoring gas prices. Psaki said the U.S. is not a party to the talks, but is directly communicating to reach an agreement. She added Washington is hoping for a deal that will promote access to affordable and reliable energy. Earlier, the OPEC Plus group cancelled a scheduled meeting, dashing hopes for an agreement to satisfy the growing oil demand. In India, DILIP Kumar, a veteran actor and once the heartthrob of millions across the world, has died at the age of 98 in Mumbai. The veritable legend acted in more than 65 films over nearly 5 decades. Kumar's real name was Muhammad Yusuf Khan, and he was born in Pakistan's city of Peshawar. He enjoyed a massive audience in the country of his origin. Kumar is survived by his wife, Saida Bano, a Bollywood actress herself. Pakistan's national broadcaster, PTV, paid tribute to his career and work as a philanthropist. And for more on this, we are joined by Mayank Shekhar. Thank you for your time at Indus News. So what made DILIP Kumar such a larger-than-life celebrity?
Well, multiple reasons, of course. The first one, given how long he lived, he passed away at 98. He'd actually seen Indian cinema and indeed India as a result through multiple decades, and he was to a huge extent the right person at the right time. You know, he's the first, he's the last man was the last man standing between what used to be the Bombay film studio system and what became the Star system thereafter. He was an actor with the Bombay talkies, and you know, back in the day, the studio system meant that you would be an actor who's employed in a particular company, you would be hired for the job, you would have a monthly salary. So he was a studio era actor, you know, in the 1940s, which is when he started with the film called Jwar Bhata, which was in 1944. And then that whole studio system broke down post-independence. And he stuck around as possibly, and perhaps a lot of people would agree with me, the greatest movie star of that era in the 1950s. So there was a change that he saw from studio to the star system, and he was right at the top of both those changes. Then there were the stories that he told as an actor, as a storyteller, which reflected a new generation altogether. You know, there were stories that were not just fantasies in the 50s, but also stories that talked about resurgence of a country, that talked about nation building, and he was right at the center of those films. So that was the entire 50s, and the 60s was, of course, a much lighter generation in terms of storytelling, and he was right on top there too. So we're looking at 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s was where he was missing, but he came back in the 80s again with multiple films like Karma, you know, Kranti, Mashal. So he was relevant again in the 80s, and of course there was the 90s, you know, which was basically the end of his career in a sense. I think Killa was his last film in 1998. So if you just look at it in terms of the sheer body of work, also in terms of time, in terms of the filmmakers he worked with, in terms of the systems that he worked under, I think there is absolutely very little parallel to Dilip Kumar in that sense.
So Shekhar, why did he disconnect himself from the entertainment industry?
No, I don't think he ever disconnected himself from the entertainment industry. I think there was age, which was a huge factor. Also, for the past decade or so, a little less than that, he had been suffering from Alzheimer's. You know, and you know, his wife Saida Bano was the caregiver. I think one needs to also credit her for being by his side at these very tough times. So, in that sense, I think health was not on his side for a very long time. Of course, you know, of course, we all wish that he could live until 100. That's what even the doctors said when he passed away. They were trying their best for, you know, to sort of see him through his century, as it were. But he was not in the prime of his condition, health-wise, especially mental health-wise, to you know, participate in a lot of engagements, whether personal or social engagements. But he was there. I think you know, he had a Twitter handle. You could see. I'm presuming his wife was handling it. So but even before that, before the ailment hit him, I think he took great interest, not just in the cinema of its time, but also in cinema's issues. You know, he would be right there in front when, you know, to back the bodies, the film bodies, when they had a demand, whether with the government or with other sectors. So he was a fairly engaged man right towards the end of his life, which is you know, which of course at some point health was not on his side.
So how do you believe he will be remembered?
he will be remembered for his films, frankly speaking. Not too many actors have had movies across decades, across generations that have survived the test of memory, the test of time, public memory, as it were. And whether it's a movie like Mughal-e-Azam back in the 60s, a film like Naya Daur, a film like Madhumati, which won the maximum number of Filmfare Awards. He was, in fact, the first actor to win the Best Actor Filmfare Award back in 1952 for Daag. He also was not an insecure actor. He worked with his contemporaries. He had a film with Dev Anand. He had a film with Raj Kapoor. Raj Kapoor and Dev Anand did not work with each other in that sense. And, you know, going down generations, he worked with Amitabh Bachchan in Shakti, worked with Anil Kapoor all the way down in Mashal. So there was that element. But I think the most important thing to remember about Dilip Kumar is the fact that he was an original actor. The generation before him, the actors who came, the lead actors, were very theatrical in their projection of their craft, as it were. Indian cinema the silent cinema actually came from a long tradition of Parsi theatre. But he was, and of course he got this tag of being a method actor, which is unfair on him. I think he was a self-learned, self-taught actor who was subdued, who was not always over the top, who had his mannerisms, but he was not restricted to his mannerisms, which explains the complete variety of roles he played all through his career. Although he got tagged along as the tragedy king because of films like Devdas, but I think he had an incredible range as an actor also. Whether you look at it as a comedian, he did a bunch of films, or masala films like a Ganga Jamuna, which was a huge success too. So commercially successful films, but done in a way that had not been seen for this long before. That's how people are going to remember Dilip Kumar for generations to come.
Mayank Shekhar, thank you very much for your time at Indus News. And to talk more about this, we are joined by Adnan Siddiqui. Adnan, thank you for your time at Indus News. So what do you think, what made Dilip Kumar such a larger-than-life celebrity?
Dilip Kumar Sahab was one of the most aristocratic actors. We have graced the big screen, and such actors, such body of work will be guiding the generation of actors to come. And I think it's the end of an era. A huge loss, not for India or Pakistan, but for the entire world, I guess.
Adnan, why did he disconnect himself from the entertainment industry?
Such actors, who reach their self-actualization, and then, and especially, when you're not even feeling well, and when you see the body of work, what you carry on your shoulder, and then what you see, what's happening around, makes them a little upset as well. That's what I feel. And I may be wrong over here, but the quality, a complete actor. Maybe I would rate him as a complete actor. None of these actors, including me or anyone else, are complete as an actor. But I guess God made Dilip Sahab for an example. If you really want to see a complete actor, maybe there's one or two actors who were like complete actors, and one of them was Dilip Sahab. And I feel that, not only with his acting, with his style, with his dialogue delivery, and the intellect he carries, you could talk to him about any issues of the world, and he was well informed about it too. This is how actors should be. This is what one should follow if someone wants to be an actor. If anybody who wants to be an actor, just follow Dilip Sahab's body of work.
So Adnan, how do you believe he will be remembered?
People die, actors don't die. And such actors like Dilip Sahab, they will be there to teach the world by lighting, by his body of work, what he has done. And of course, he was a legend. And, legends don't die. and people will remember forever, forever. He will be lived in a lot of memories, a lot of his films, a lot of his sayings, and hats off to his wife, Sarah Begum. The way she took care of him, the way she was there for him. I think this is one more example of being a great wife, a woman, a heroine who was there right till the last of the breath.
Adnan Siddiqui, thank you very much for your time at Indus News. We really appreciate that. And now moving on, Saudi Arabia has thrown its weight behind Egypt and Sudan in a dispute over Ethiopia's giant dam on the Blue Nile. Saudi state media said the kingdom supports the two in preserving their legitimate water rights. Riyadh called on the international community to intensify efforts for negotiations to resolve this crisis. Meanwhile, the UN called on Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt to recommit to talks on the operation of the dam. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged the parties to the conflict to avoid any unilateral action. Earlier, Ethiopia started the second phase of filling the reservoir of its dam. At least 28 students have been rescued out of around 150 abducted in Nigeria's northwest Kaduna state. State authorities say 125 students are still missing after the attack by armed men on a boarding school on Monday. They said search and rescue operations are ongoing for their safe return. Heavily armed criminal gangs often attack villages to loot and abduct for ransom in northwest and central Nigeria. Around 1,000 students have been abducted in different Nigerian states since December last year. The US has stressed the need for an immediate and indefinite ceasefire in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said this during a call with Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. The State Department said Blinken also called for Abiy to commit to steps outlined by the UN Security Council last week. In a statement, it said Blinken also demanded accountability for those involved in human rights abuses. Earlier, the commander of the Tigray rebel forces called for a negotiated ceasefire with the Ethiopian government. Abiy's government has been battling the Tigray People's Liberation Front since early November. Former South African President Jacob Zuma has attempted to block his arrest in court. Police say they will hold back as Zuma's legal challenge unfolds. A week ago, the Constitutional Court sentenced Zuma to a 15-month jail over the contempt of court. The court gave Zuma 5 days to hand himself in, failing which police were instructed to arrest him. But Zuma asked the Constitutional Court to cancel its sentence and approached a higher court to issue an order to prevent his arrest. Hundreds of his supporters were gathered nearby at his rural homestead to prevent his arrest. In France, women will outnumber men on the Cannes Film Festival jury this year. However, its members dream of a time when female representation would no longer be newsworthy in the cinema industry. More in this report. The Cannes Film Festival previously came under scrutiny over the low number of women directors nominated for top awards or in the positions of influence. But this time, 5 women will make up the 9-strong jury panel. Jury member, French actress and director Méliane Laurent hoped it would be the last festival with debate surrounding women.
I dream for us all that we will be the first and last festival where there is a debate about women. I don't know, I'm a bit naive, but if we can let this planet breathe, let women breathe at the same time, and that there is no more debate, no more absurdity, no more crazy stories, it would be wonderful.
Mati Diop, the French-Senegalese actress, also said she hoped the cinema world would one day be free of such distinctions. The organizers said only 4 films directed by women were picked among the 24 vying for the Palme d'Or this year. However, they added that the number of female directors present in other parallel events and competitions had increased. Denmark has unveiled the world's tallest sandcastle with a height of over 21 meters. The castle, made with nearly 8 tons of sand, is 3.5 meters higher than the previous record. More in this report. The sandcastle built at the Blocher Sand Sculpture Festival broke the Guinness World Record previously made in Germany in 2019. Dutch designer Wilfried Steiger said the corona pandemic had inspired the sandcastle. At the top of the castle, he put a coronavirus as a crown to illustrate how the virus is ruling the world.
We started with Corona on top, and we give it a crown because Corona means crown. It's like nice and double, but we give it also a crown because it's ruling our lives everywhere. It tells you what to do. It tells you to wear a mouth protection. It tells you to stay away from your family and not go to the nice places. Don't do the activities. Stay home.
Like many other big sandcastles, it is made as a triangle to prevent collapse. The sand is made up of 10% clay for it to stick better, while an extra layer of glue is also put on to make it last through most of the winter.
I'm amazed. But I'm always amazed when the sculptors are making the sand sculptures. But this year it's amazing. It's very, very, very beautiful artwork you've never seen before.
The Guinness World Record was measured by an authorized surveyor and will be in the book's next edition. The Blocher Sand Sculpture Festival takes place every summer, and the sculptures can be seen all year round until the 30th of December. European stocks have advanced, diverging from a more cautious and uncertain tone among global markets. Frankfurt's DAX is leading the gains, rising nearly 1%. London's FTSE and the Pan-European Stock 600 also ascended over 0.5%. Italy's FTSE MIB has added nearly 0.5%, while the CAC 40 in Paris has edged up marginally as well. Earlier Asian markets traded mixed, following overnight losses on Wall Street and S&P 500. DD Global Incorporation's shares have slumped as much as 25% in the U.S. pre-market trade. This comes ahead of its first session since Chinese regulators ordered the company's app to be taken down. In Tuesday's pre-market trade, DD shares fell to $11.59, well below its debut price of $17. It is set to shed nearly $19 billion in market capitalization. China removed the ride-sharing giant from app stores after a probe into its handling of customer data. Other US-listed Chinese firms facing investigations include Full Truck Alliance and Kanzun, are also set to open lower. The Pentagon has cancelled its $10 billion joint enterprise defense infrastructure cloud computing project. In a statement, the department said tech giants Microsoft Core and Amazon are the only providers capable of meeting its requirements. Defense Department said it will have a new bidding process for what it calls a multi-cloud, multi-vendor program. Microsoft shares dipped a little more than 1% after the news, while Amazon's stocks rose more than 3%. The now cancelled Jerry cloud contract was part of a broader digital modernization of the Pentagon. The contract was awarded to Microsoft in 2019, but Amazon quickly filed a lawsuit in objection. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that is all for now. With the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.